Welcome back to the FF Forge. My name's Steve. We will be continuing our rankings haul today with the running backs. I just want to start off by saying that I will probably not do these, at least the running back and wide receiver positions like this again next week. So if you do like something about this format specifically, or just the entirety of it compared to just a straight rankings video, let me know. But I think it will work better on my end too, to do like an initial rankings, and then that gives me a little bit more time to do all the data entry for the projections. You can find my rankings as they get updated throughout the week on the website www.theffforge.com. Link is down in the description. Thank you very much for your support. This chart and what you are seeing here on the screen is all explained in a little bit of detail in the quarterbacks video, so please go and check out those rankings. And in the beginning of that video, you can find a description for this. One real quick thing that I may reference in the video is over here. This is the, I like to call it the temperature gauge. Red is good, blue is bad, and this is just sort of a how some of the factors in the matchup, are they conducive to a good game or not. So then we will jump right on over here. These are the consensus rankings from Fantasy Pros as they are as of the time that I lifted them from the website, in order to just find some of the hot spots to look at in my projections and defend them, mock them. Remember, these projections are only based off of 2 weeks of data. That is not enough data to trust, especially when you have things like people missing portions of games, which can mess with some of the statistics going into some of this data as well. The top 10 in my rankings, my projected rankings, are Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones, Christian McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, Antonio Gibson, and Kareem Hunt. The main two that I want to point out and talk about here, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, essentially just calling him a sleeper of sorts this week. You're playing him, and this may be a real nice matchup, as you can see over here too from the thermometer. And the second person is going to be Kareem Hunt here. I have him, he is much higher in these projections than he is ranked, and I would just say that I feel like this is a good game for Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, both of them. Maybe similar to last week, they should be able to play the type of game that they want to play. Make this a beat-em-up kind of game, so there should be enough opportunities against a Pittsburgh team that doesn't really have it on offense, and their defense is maybe a little bit dwindling compared to how they came into the year. So I like this matchup for Kareem Hunt. Another sleeper there. I won't have him this highly ranked, nor Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Then the following 10 are Javonte Williams, Austin Eckler, James Robinson, Miles Sanders, Michael Carter, David Montgomery, A.J. Dillon, Cordell Patterson, and Jamal Williams. The big surprise there. And it looks like Najee Harris made it in there too. As far as this little cluster here, James Robinson, Miles Sanders, and Michael Carter goes, as for James Robinson and Miles Sanders, yeah, they're probably a little high here. James Robinson, I'm back and forth on how I feel. I do think that these are probably pretty representative of how to feel about him this week, which by the visual probably puts him closer to back end running back 2. What I'm getting at with James Robinson is that I do believe he's essentially a must start with a bust kind of check mark next to him. I am concerned about the specific matchup of Jacksonville versus the Chargers. And then for Michael Carter, I think 34th rank, it feels a little low for the 21st running back in half PPR scoring so far. And this is a matchup where there could be scoring opportunities for sure, again, for this team. It doesn't feel quite representative of where I think he will end up in my rankings. More of a borderline starter than a flex option from what I can tell. And then Jamal Williams is obviously misplaced up here. I am pretty sure that he is strictly there in the projections due to an insane amount of red zone and goal line carries that he's had. I think he's had like 9 red zone touches and carries and 3 to 5 goal line carries. So, yeah, that definitely bumped up his projection here. They must like his chances at a touchdown or 2 if I had to take my best swing at how he got this high in the rankings there. But not a bad week to take a swing on a Jamal Williams type. In that flex position, he's at the consensus 39. He would definitely be a sleeper. I'll probably have him a little bit higher than that. I have to take issue here with Dalvin Cook, and I guess let me start off by saying the next 10 contestants are Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, James Conner, Breece Hall, Tony Pollard, Darrell Henderson, Alvin Kamara, Damian Harris, J.D. McKissick, and Josh Jacobs. And there's just kind of the height of talking about guys here, and then we'll die down a little. Maybe not. So Dalvin Cook is third in the consensus rankings, 21st here. And he'll be somewhere in the middle of those two, probably top 10, but definitely not third. This feels a little delusional or wishful potentially from the experts, in my opinion. A little bit trusting that name or thinking that they're going to trounce on Detroit. There is the saving grace for me. There should be some touchdown opportunities in this game for Dalvin Cook to potentially take advantage of, given the types of games that Detroit has been involved in so far and what we believe that Minnesota offense is more closer to that week 1 than week 2. But here is why I believe this is way too high for Dalvin Cook at number 3 here. He has the 6th highest participation in a percentage of routes ran, the 4th highest actual number of routes run. He is 29th in yards per route run and catch rate, and 28th in yards per reception. So they're obviously passing a lot. He's involved in that passing game as far as opportunity goes, so that's a good thing. But his efficiency with his opportunities has not been very good. To add on to that, this rushing game may be a little bit predictable for defenses. He has faced the 9th highest percentage of stacked fronts during his rushing attempts, meaning that often defenses know when they're running, and or they're just running in expected running situations, 3rd and short type deals, a good chunk of the time. I don't understand quite that ranking. Then moving on to Fournette, they're right below him. I don't have much to say about this one, as in I tend to agree probably more with the ranking, but the Green Bay defense has not looked the best against the run. And I believe part of the reason for that may be due to them essentially begging offenses to run on them. They were in the lead against Chicago during a lot of the time when David Montgomery was eating up their defense. And I think once again, they were just in a situation where they weren't really trying to, it was kind of surprising that the Bears were running in the first place, and they were like, yeah, sure, go right ahead, eat up clock, we don't care, take 9 yards at a time for a little while, and then we'll focus on stopping that a little bit more as we get closer to the end zone, but we don't care if you get a field goal. That seems to be have been the defensive philosophy, so I'm not so sure that this Green Bay defense is as bad against the run, and they're not even the worst against the run as far as fantasy points allowed go, but I do believe that they're probably stronger if they really want to stop the run. And this might be a game where they'll end up wanting to stop the run, or even if the weapons are short again for Tampa Bay, they may even have the opportunity to just focus on the run a little bit more, maybe not so scared about what's going on behind them if it is a close game. So I'm not so sure about Leonard Fournette having a big week. More of a top of the line running back 2. As far as Breece Hall and Tony Pollard go, I have them higher than the rankings here. Obviously, Breece Hall, I'm definitely not going to argue about that. He will be lower in my rankings. I'd put a light sleeper tag on Breece Hall just because I do think that Cincinnati's going to have their way with the Jets defense. I think this will be a bit of a get right week. And so maybe Breece Hall will be the receiving back. I don't know exactly. That's the thing. Who knows exactly what that backfield's going to look like at this point. There hasn't been any kind of predictability even as far as like game flow goes. Then for Tony Pollard, I don't really like him a whole lot this week in this matchup. I'm in agreement with him not being right here near the flex line. I tried giving you a heads up last week for J.D. McKissic, and I think it turned out pretty well for him. This is another week where I think they may need to lean on that passing, rushing attack a little bit more. I will have him higher than 45. That's for sure, and definite sleeper tag for J.D. McKissic in a game where Washington may be struggling to keep up. And then as far as Josh Jacobs goes, I really don't know what to think about this at this point. 16 probably feels a little bit too high. There is this incredible ceiling here for some reason. You're playing Josh Jacobs, but this feels like a boom or bust game to me. That's the quick of it. Then for the next 10, we have Nyheim Hines, J.K. Dobbins, Jerick McKinnon, Eno Benjamin, Rex Burkhead, Jeff Wilson Jr., Derrick Henry, Travis Etienne, Khalil Herbert, Chase Edmonds. As far as this number 58 here for consensus, that's just, we don't know if J.K. Dobbins is playing this week. But I did want to point out that if he is playing this week, I used last year's or 2 years ago numbers for his projections, and he was, this is where he landed. So even if we got word that he's going to be a full go, he's not a smash start. He's at the back end of flex position, and I'm not going to really argue with that too much. Plus or minus a few spots maybe in the rankings. Don't know exactly where that will end up. And then Jeff Wilson, I don't know why he's this far back in the projections, to be perfectly honest. Maybe it has to do something with the matchup there. I don't know, but I would tend to lean towards more of this. He is maybe not a must start, but he's on the borderline of being a flex wide receiver 2 option. And then Derrick Henry's obviously miscast here at number 37. And this has to do, I believe, this probably heavily has to do with the amount of usage that he would have, opportunity more so than usage that he would have gotten, as well as his actual production. But you're playing him, duh. And then there's some names here that will definitely be dropped further down. Just want to point that out. On to Kenneth Gainwell, Dameon Pierce, Raheem Mostert, Devin Singletary, Rashad Penny, Ezekiel Elliott, Melvin Gordon. Some names you did not expect to see down this low. Mark Ingram, Ramondre Stevenson, Zach Moss. I have Dameon Pierce quite a bit lower. That is in part, at the very least, due to his usage in week 1, weighing everything down. So this feels like a game where you would feel somewhat comfortable flexing him here against Chicago. Not an amazing matchup, but maybe a matchup that Houston can actually kind of handle and hang in with more expectantly. Who knows? Maybe they'll blow Chicago out or something. Be insane. And then Devin Singletary, Rashad Penny, Melvin Gordon, Ezekiel Elliott in here. So Devin Singletary, I would think that this may be a good week for him. Actually, I might have him a little bit higher than this in my rankings because they might have to respect Miami's offense a bit coming into this game. So there may be a little bit more of a focus for Devin Singletary. And assuming Miami gives them the fight that we are hoping for here, that would also mean that Singletary plays an entire game, which definitely didn't happen last week. And I think week 1, they kind of were able to retire a little bit early too, if I recall correctly. Then as far as Rashad Penny goes and being number 30 in the consensus rankings, I don't agree with that. I understand that this is a nice matchup, but I mean, is Seattle really a team that we expect to be able to take advantage of what seems like a nice matchup? And Atlanta's better than they were last year. And Ken Walker's there now, and he's definitely, I think his usage will increase. So Rashad Penny's not somebody I want to touch. He's not in that flex conversation for me. Don't know exactly where he'll be in my rankings, but definitely, I'm sure, lower than 30. Then Ezekiel Elliott all the way down here. What is going on? He actually feels a bit like a Dameon Pierce kind of decision right now, where nothing about it. I don't really love this matchup for him either against the Giants, and he's definitely a guy you could choose not to play this week. Just put it like that. And then Melvin Gordon here is somebody that I'm really not wanting to play against San Francisco, and part of that reason is because his opportunity share went down last week from week 1. And as far as Ramondre Stevenson goes, his opportunity share actually went up last week. However, his usage did not. So that is a good sign as far as getting more opportunities, but that doesn't always pan out to more usage as it didn't last week, but it can be a predictor of things to come. So there is a slight silver lining for Ramondre there. And then Cam Akers, I think best case scenario, he gets the same workload as he got last week. I would imagine that the Rams will go into the game with that sort of intent, with a similar opportunity share of how much they actually got on the field. I would assume that the team wants that to be similar as far as the game plan goes here against Arizona. But I would think they also may have a second half contingency in place in case this Arizona offense is clicking. And that contingency plan that I'm thinking of would require more Henderson. And I've pretty much been in the brain of, I can't remember the Rams coach's name right now. He's probably one of the most well-known names in the league right now. And I can't remember it, but I'm like in sync with him this offseason and so far this season. So we'll see if I can continue that. So that just leaves Cam Akers in this spot of, he's a flex option. I feel about as good playing him as I do Henderson, except Henderson I feel there's a little bit more upside with than Cam. So that is it. I will be back with the wide receiver rankings in no time. If you didn't catch, the quarterback and tight end rankings should already be up, and ta-ta for now.